All right, so we're back. That was an awesome first hour on controls. And
Sure.
did anyone? Were there any other follow-up questions on that? Or we can, if anyone wants to, or does anyone have anything they want to share? Have they been working on anything cool? If there are no questions, one thing
Go, Joe.
Oh, I was going to say. Well, I was just going to mention is I have begun starting to work on a Udemy course for like an intro to AutoHotkey, and here in the next couple of weeks, I should have some time hopefully and can start cranking it out. But it's one of those things I don't really want to create. It's not my end goal. My end goal is to write a book about how to automate your daily life, but I think we really need to have an intro and an intermediate level of training in AutoHotkey for people that want to watch videos. So I'm going to create them just because nobody has. At least there are tutorials out there. Don't get me wrong, but having a structured way to go through it. There's some good tutorials out there as far as reading, but a lot of people want to see videos, and it's very different when you watch someone doing stuff versus reading a post about it.
It sure is, and again, all of those have their own merits, because if I'm sitting there, how was it I did that? The video is great, where if I'm learning, I want to have both. I want to have someone showing me, taking me through it, but I'd also like to, to me, pausing a video doesn't work as well as just staying at a specific place in a text.
Yeah.
Just because the video, when you pause it, you're no longer have access to the information that is presented. Yeah, if you have some kind of PowerPoint, you would still have some information on screen, where on the text, I can actually be working and skim over, but I could also let the video run and hear the person say the same thing over and over. So, yeah, it really depends on what you like most.
Yeah, I honestly, for a lot of the stuff, it's because when I don't deal with it that often, I'll make the video just so I can go back and watch it myself of how I solved a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also some of the times I'll post it in the forum as well. But yeah, did anyone have anything they want to share? Anyone doing anything cool?
People don't seem to be jumping to the keyboards on that one, Joe?
Yeah.
And that's okay. We probably
absolutely.
We'll probably talk about something still.
Yeah, I have. Let me see if I can launch it. I've been paying for a script to be developed that we can replace keystrokes with controls. Can you replace? Well, I'm not sure if do you get it, Jackie? Dale's asking, can you replace keystrokes with controls? I think what you're saying is, can you use controls instead of sending keystrokes? Is that what you were meaning?
And that's the issue, because if you turn that sentence on its head, it's not actually the same thing, because the way you worded it, yeah, sure you can. The way he worded it, I'm not sure if you can replace keystrokes with controls. But what keystrokes are doing in controls is that's events that's happening in Windows, and almost all of those events can be emulated with using the control commands.
Yeah, and so he's adding a bit more here, and yeah, if and if it's something you can share, and if you can download the thing, we can walk you through it right on one of them if you care to. Dale, I know you're.
I'd say, Dale, that it depends on where you're sending the keystrokes. If let's say you're sending it to the insides of a web page, it would be very hard to do with controls. It could probably be done, but I'd suggest other things. But if it's a program that has controls that AutoHotkey has good access to, then sure, you could improve upon it quite a bit. I'd say. But if it's the same as the calculator in Windows we just saw, where nothing is exposed, then your keystrokes are probably a good.
Having said that,
Yeah.
here's one, Jackie. I think you and I talked about this some. Let me bring up the
In Microsoft Office, he's saying.
Oh, well, in Office, that's, I would be using Calm.
Yeah, and again, the learning curve kicks in right as you say that word, right? Where Office does have some controls you can access, but you would probably spend your time better of actually looking into some of these Calm tutorials out there, because if you want to, let's say, send a command in Word, or put text in one place, or select a paragraph, or all of those abilities are exposed to Calm automation, which is what Joe is kind of alluding at. So even though you could probably use controls to extend some of what you're doing, you would be able to do much more if you switched over to using Calm. But controls could be a mediary, right, Joe? If, let's say, he's sending keyboard shortcuts.
Right.
One thing he's doing.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, you remember a while back, Susan had one that she was doing. Was she still here? Oh, there she is. Hi, Susan. Where she was sending keystrokes to trigger a macro that was in Excel. Yeah. And then we basically, I think that was in the second hour, if I remember right, we walked through how instead of sending the keystrokes to trigger the macro, we just did the whole macro with AutoHotkey instead. And there's nothing wrong with either approach. Don't get me wrong. It was just, hey, you know what? Calm is amazing. To Jackie's point, it's there's a learning curve, but holy cow, you can do amazing stuff. And then what's great, for me, especially like in Excel or Word or whatever, when you have a macro and you go to share it, and then the people have to click extra buttons to enable the macros, or you get caught in viruses, the email antivirus stuff, and they can't receive it, and you got to do all this other stuff. That's why I like AutoHotkey, is you don't have that embedded macro, and it just runs completely separate.
Dale, can you maybe share one of such keystroke scripts you have? Yeah. He's offering to actually show an example.
You want to unmute yourself and talk? Here's time. We're good.
I think I'm being heard?
Yeah.
All right. So now we have to share my screen.
All right, let me stop sharing here. There we go. Now you should be able to.
So if I hit this, I want this main screen. Those my Outlook being shown.
Yep.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So you just you find things you're doing over and over again, and so
absolutely
I can filter out spam into my bulk folder. So instead of clicking there and selecting everything and pressing Shift to delete to permanent delete it, I wrote a script. Where'd it go? Oh, so bring it back over here. I checked that Outlook is running. Go to, you can see the keystrokes that I go up, I go down to the end of the column, then I go up 12 places and hit enter, sleep a couple of seconds. Then I send Alt OE, which is in, I guess I'd have to look what that does. Selects them all, I think. And I go home, and this takes me back up to the home. So if you wanted to see it run, I run it off of Quick Access Pop-Up, and Outlook, empty bulk mail, so it won't demo. Great.
Yeah. Well, and this is why, no matter how good it is, sending keystrokes to me, it's compared to using COM is amazing. And you can definitely do, we can isolate, we can tell it find this folder, you know, with this specific name, and select all the items in it, and, you know, move them to the trash, or not even move them to the trash, just delete them entirely, right? We could easily do whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm permanently deleting them.
You know,
we had a brief power outage here, like the end of hour 1. So if I hit that.
in the chat.
So what it does in the script, it goes to here.
Yep.
It selects them all. And then it pauses there. Like, so I held down Shift and I pressed delete. And so I usually just review to make sure these are ones I want to delete and there isn't anything in there by mistake. It clicks yes, and then it'll go back up to my inbox.
Oh, cool.
So, and I do that with the sync issues typically as well. So that's why I was just asking whether, to me, controls is like the next step forward, but it didn't look like it could control the program the same way. You're saying go right to COM?
Yeah, because that ribbon, and that's what I was demonstrating right before we switched to it. I didn't realize you were using Outlook, but when you try to use either WinSpy tool and you drag it up there, you'll see it'll highlight maybe like an edit box, but that's about all. Whereas COM, you're not even sending to connect to something on the screen. You're just, and Jackie can explain it better, but you're literally, you know, telling it to jump to your bulk mail. Well, I shouldn't say jump, because you're just saying, hey, get all the files in the bulk mail folder and permanently delete them. You don't have to worry that you're on the right one or not. Even you can have it display them first if you want and then stop. I personally like that approach.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be so much more reliable and lightning fast.
All right, I've been starting to read up and watch the COM videos. It's a different beast.
It is. It is. Agreed.
But,
and here's one of the unfortunate things about Outlook. In Excel and Word, and I think PowerPoint, maybe I'm wrong on that, but you can record a macro and look at the code. In Outlook, it doesn't have the record a macro feature. So you can't just kind of hit record macro, go do the actions, and then look at the code. Unfortunately, in Outlook, that doesn't work.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'd say what Joe is talking about is something that can be a quick way to get an overview of which things needs to happen in your script by recording a macro, right? Because the VBA will structure all of the COM commands in the exact same way, almost as AutoHotkey would need it to look. Whereas you don't have that to Outlook, you actually need to go online somewhere and read the Outlook documentation and how to programmatically interact with it. And it might slow building scripts for Outlook down a bit, even though you already know some COM. You'd still need to actually go and pretty much look up all of those commands that you don't usually use. I don't know, Joe, is it an idea to go through doing something here on Dale's computer in COM, or are we too far off from control?
I don't mind trying it. It's given the time and the complexity of Outlook, especially, and I have some sample code we could use for finding that folder, which to me is usually the hardest part. And also, I don't know, Dale, do you have more than one email address in your Outlook? Or is it just the one?
Just this one.
Okay, because that does help. I have like 8, or probably more in mine, and then you have to say, okay, which account are you talking about, and then
right.
find this folder in this account. But I have some examples of that, and then it's just we'd have to loop over. We'd have to get all the items, because inside your folder the emails are items, and then you build that list, and then I don't know if we would. I don't remember if we'd move them to the. I've moved things. I think there's a delete or I don't think there's a drop. Do you remember, Jackie? Is there a delete? I don't recall.
I can't remember for sure. It's been quite some time since I last automated Outlook, but I was just thinking maybe the example script you had, maybe we don't even need to do it on Dale's per se, but maybe just going over a small example of finding a specific folder and making it visible, making the active one. So Dale, he doesn't need to send keys 12 down and 12 up.
Right.
And yeah.
Let me. Why don't you guys let me run to the restroom just real quick, so then I can actually think a little clearer. It'll take me like 30 seconds, but then I'll come back. I do have an example of going to a specific folder, looping over the items in it, so we can play with that. So I'll be right back.
Fair enough. Joe, he also just linked to another tutorial that Miggers did on Outlook, and it tries to do the same. No, I do believe the Outlook one, it wasn't really structured in a way that was per se easily. Let me see. Yeah, it's not really the same thing as he did with the IE one. This one here is much more just a quick. Here, there's this object. There's this object. There, it isn't really a tutorial. It's more just like a resource for actually figuring out different types of stuff. So if you wanted to take the active Outlook application, I know you guys can't see my screen, but I actually have loaded the tutorial on screen. Maybe I can actually control and share here. Let me see if I can. No, Joe hasn't actually given me that.
Oh,
Maybe. Yeah, I'll
should I stop sharing mine?
I should be able to take over, like so.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Let's take this one here, and this is the Miggers one, and the first one he's mentioning is actually the way to grab the active Outlook application. Interesting. Is my sound totally weird? Or
it echoed a little. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still echoing in my own headset, but yeah. This one would be the startup, whatever, and stuff like that. So by simply taking this one line, you would have the application object of your loaded Outlook.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually the beginning of doing stuff with Outlook, and from there on out, you can continue in the same way. Let me just see here. And that would be the active Explorer. Again, it depends on what you want to do. Do you have an actual pre-written example, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple. I have some looping over emails in a given folder, was what I was thinking is close.
Yeah, take that one because I believe it's the Active Explorer that you need to use
you're right.
access.
Yeah.
So let me stop sharing and then you can take over, Joe.
Okay.
Send I wash hands or not wash hands. Interesting. Yeah.
That's so funny you wrote that because that was when I came back. I was going to say I washed my hands, everybody. Like, trust me. That's how you get viruses, by the way. Is
by washing your hands. Yeah.
No, from not washing them on a webinar and someone goes back. So let's see. Should I use OBJ anywhere? That's probably just extra. In here, so Active Explorer selection. Oh, okay. So this is gonna it gets the attachments, but let's loop over selected emails. This audio is weird all of a sudden, even for me. Let me uncomment these. You know what? I'm going to mute Dale for a second here. Nope, wasn't Dale. And it's not Jackie. And I can't mute myself. David, I think you have muted yourself, and for whatever reason, I think that was the reverb we were getting. Anyway, okay, this script was about saving attachments, automatically saving attachments, but it's going to come in here. It's going to get the count of emails in a folder that we're in, and then it's going to go over and it's going to look for attachments for each email. But I thought I had a different one. You know what? Let me look at one other spot here real quickly. So just so everyone can see, under Outlook, I got a lot of different email checker, loop through emails. Here we go. This is looking good. Okay. So this, by the way, this is how I can get a specific folder. This automate folder. This is how I'm getting a pointer to that folder. And Jackie, did you? I think you can unmute yourself now. I unmuted.
Yeah, I can. I just wanted to do something.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So, no, I muted myself to try and alleviate that sound problem. But you found out what it was, so that's
right.
Good. What were you asking about, Joe?
Well, I was just getting. So this one's a little bit better. It's going to go and looking up. But let's pick a. Actually, I don't even have Outlook open.
To me, when I'm looking at this, because it's a bit too long ago for me to be sure. Here you're getting the namespace Mappy. Yeah, that's folders. Fair enough. Get default folder 6, and then you're getting folders on the default folder 6 automate. Do you have extra depth of in yours? Do you have subfolders of folders or what?
Yeah, and 6 is get default folder with 6 is your default inbox.
Yeah.
For your default account. So in this one, I don't have it named the account, but it does. If I had a folder called Automate, which I don't think I currently do, but let me go ahead and create it. Right? And then we can just use it. So new folder, Automate. Apparently someone sent me some money.
Lucky you.
Yeah. So here's a couple emails in here. And now, hopefully, let's shrink that thing down some.
Make sure you comment out the stuff you don't want to happen.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to look at what I'm doing here. I think right now, it's just going to go over and get,
It's actually going to delete something. If there's delete me in the subject, it will actually do that.
Okay, and so this is how in the subject. It's building a list. Is that what it's doing?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's building a list per se, because that doesn't look like a building thing, but it might be doing that.
No, I don't know, because it's interesting. It looks like maybe this was a merging of, but let's just put a return here.
Yeah.
Let's not worry about any of that. So save it, run it, and I hit my hotkey. It doesn't like it. Cannot be attempted.
What did it actually say?
Could not be found. An object cannot be found.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, duh. Yeah. I mean that wasn't. Oh.
That shouldn't be a problem, whatever you're doing there. Because the two first ones are redundant.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. It's just an extension of it. Okay.
And the one, my dest folder, that one, you can remove that one as well. Yeah. And then you have the mail, which is the one you use on the next active line.
Right.
So here you're about there. But again, this get default folder 6, which you say is your inbox.
Right.
Here you can see there's get default folder 9. 3 is constant deleted items.
Oh.
5 is sent, 9 is calendar, 10 is contact. So 6 is probably, as you said yourself,
Yeah.
the inbox. And then you're finding the folder with a big A, automate. And is that actually what it's called?
Oh, look at that. So oh, you know what? Oh, I know what it is. The stupid, it's not my default. Yeah. My bad. This is what I was saying is look at all the email accounts I have. I think this is my, but that.
And you have an automate one there. So,
so why didn't that?
Yeah, maybe because it's not the default.
Well, this should be the default, but they're in the inbox. Oh. 0 items in your inbox, and like you said, there was a automate folder there. So, but why is it not?
Again, I'm not sure you're actually getting to the right place.
Right.
Because get default folders as you're using now, you have nowhere in your code have you specified anything about which account this is on. So I'm not really sure you have enough information in your code.
Well, I can pick a different one, but that one, when you don't specify, it goes to your default account.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I'm pretty darn sure of that, but obviously, well, so what seems odd is
should you have it keeps saying you have 0.
Right.
So that is working. It's actually finding an inbox somewhere.
Right. That's
but
right.
Apparently that inbox is empty from
Right.
what it's saying. So
Yes.
depending on whichever inbox it might be, if it's actually.
Yeah, I was trying to go around and see which accounts. Not that one.
No. They all seem to have some kind of.
Oh.
That one as well. You have an auto reply on all of them, it seems.
How do I have 2 that are the same? That's interesting.
Yeah.
I know it's not that one. So I don't even know what the world this one is. Oh, look at that. That's it.
Oh, so that's the one.
Yeah.
It's the one at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you actually created an automate folder in that one, you could do it. Yeah. So, and if you then extended it with folders, automate in the code.
Now there's 2, and those are the 2. And now I think if I hit OK, it's gonna. Oh, I thought it. Oh, I stopped it right there.
Yeah.
So let's get rid of this. We're gonna still leave that there, so we'll see the 2. And then we're gonna loop over mail items count, so that'll loop over them. And let's get rid of this. And actually, I'm just going to close that off and get rid of that. Now that should be fine, right?
No, because you don't have any attachments on those, probably.
Oh, okay.
And right now you're displaying the name of any attachment. And I'm not sure an email actually has a display name. Probably has a subject instead, yeah.
Yeah.
Still has some kind of issue. Mail items A index -1 seems correct.
Yeah, because that's what mail items dot. Let's try sender name.
Array index out of bounds. So 0. There's no 0 or what? They actually start at 1.
Oh, for the love of God! Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. So WordPress, where was? and John Stossel, right? So
Yeah.
that was those two. That's the sender name. And now I'm going to duplicate this, and then, actually, and we'll do subject.
Yeah.
And let's go ahead. We know there's two, so calling that out now. So there's the sender name is WordPress. That's the subject line. And then John Stossel, Defense of Capitalism. So real quickly, here's how we're looping over a specific folder, right? Dale, I lost my chat when,
Remove -1.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus is way ahead of us. But Dale, hopefully that you get an idea, right, of what we could do, and then it would just be a matter of navigating to your, was it bulk something, bulk items, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Could you perhaps, Joe, just for the visual part of it, delete all your comments or remove them, just to show actually how few lines it actually is? And you could even remove the num one if you wanted to, or you could, yeah, like so. So this is an example of those lines. You need to find the correct folder in the active Outlook window and loop over every one of them. And if you just want it because you know everything that's in the bulk folder, you might want to have displayed, let's say, a list. You could build a list with subjects, and at the end ask, do you want to delete them? And if it's a yes, just loop over all of them once more, or say delete items, whatever command is available to actually delete emails.
Now, Jackie, maybe you have a better way of doing this than what I was doing, because the one thing I did notice when I was going through and I think I was moving them, it was if I started at the front, everything shifted after I moved the one. And so I made it where I started at the last thing and moved that one and did it like a reverse order. There's probably a better way than that, I gotta think, right?
I would guess that you would select them all. Just say select and say delete selected. That's one way of doing it. There's probably multiple ways of doing it, and you could probably also just on the items array say delete all or whatever. That might also be a way of doing it, but I can't remember which commands are there. But yeah, it's a common issue if you have a list and you start deleting at one end. It actually is a dynamic list that then propagates those deleted indexes. So yeah, starting at the bottom is a fair way of getting the problem solved.
Yeah. I at some point I have a couple, a very few, but we did actually go through some of this stuff we have an Outlook webinar, right? And in that we demonstrated using Excel and a mail merge and looping over an Excel thing. But I think there was one other one of doing stuff inside of the folders, maybe iterating over just like we're doing here. And another cool way, not that I would do this, but you can go through and say, just get me what's selected, right? Highlight what's selected or go navigate in here, move them, automate saving the attachments, which that's what one of those other scripts I had. A buddy of mine at work every day would get emails and he'd have to go to them and then file and save as and save them in a certain folder. So we wrote a tool that would automatically go do that for him instead. And so it was really nice to not have to go through and manually do that every time.
Yeah.
That is so weird. As much as I wish everything was not zero-based indexed, it's so crazy to me that like these didn't have the zero. Hopefully everyone followed that what we had wrong was, for whatever reason, these are not zero-based for the A index. They're straight up. They start out number one.
Yeah, and depending on people's level, just having the -1 there might not really tell people that it's because it's zero indexed.
Right.
Usually. So yeah. Here it was just for the most part, when you work with Excel and other stuff, it's zero indexed, but still, if it's row or column based in Excel, it's still one. So it isn't actually 0 index on the first cell, as I remember, unless you actually use the cell object. I can't remember. Probably shouldn't say anymore. Yeah.
Just stop talking. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in AutoHotkey, right, when you're doing a loop, it starts off at 1, not 0. And so that was why initially I had -1 here, because I'm like, oh, it's 0 base index. Well, it wasn't in this case, so it was perfectly fine having the A index. And then the second time through it'll be 2, and the third time through it'll be 3, right? So
yeah, but yeah, to get the -1 there, you also need to have a good idea of expressions, and so because you're actually doing dynamic math on that built-in variable, right? So yeah, it is an extra level.
this is the one where I was getting the list of all the things I wanted, and then I think somewhere down in
This one seems to be a more complete version of whatever the other one you had was.
Yeah. And apparently I was playing some noise, which I don't. Isn't it crazy how you can look at stuff that you wrote and like it doesn't even look familiar? I was
As time goes by,
Yeah.
I think that's a usual thing that happens.
But I have a lot of stuff where I've done a lot of things in Outlook.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, the calendar stuff, is a great thing, by the way. You can do some great stuff with your calendar in Outlook as well, which is nice. All right.
And yeah, there are really many. There's a lot of stuff you can do, and as we will probably need to review all of this if everybody starts moving to Office 365 and using the web-based versions of all the Office programs. But at the moment, with what was it called, Office 2016, right? Even though I believe it's still updated to 19, but still, yeah.
Yeah, it's so confusing. This, by the way, this one, a friend of mine had sent all these emails, and a lot of them bounced. But so she got a reply back, but it was really, you had to like double click into the email of the ones that bounced to go find the email address that bounced. And so I automated going in there and finding if it bounced, and then stripping and getting out the email address automatically and putting it into a list. So and she had like 10,000 of them. So
yeah,
it was a great easy way to go through and just loop over everything and grab the piece that you want.
Again, this all narrows down to something that someone is doing manually at the moment.
Yep.
And when you look at this and thinking about this poor woman who's going over all these bounced emails and reading them, and she might need to scroll down in the body 2 times to actually get to the line where the word failed is there. And with her mouse, she probably is selecting the email she's seeing there, and copying it out and putting it into something else, and then on to the next one.
Yeah.
Where these, whatever it is, 10 lines of code, will do it, and it will do it in seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Another one I wrote, which I haven't used it in a long time, but contact address book. So let me see if this. What's the most recent version of this? I've demonstrated it before. Oh, I think it's running right now.
Mm.
It Oh, there it goes. So it took a while because it went through every one of my accounts and every email, and I can hit start, and it's going to loop over all of them. Well, actually, I can check and deselect which ones I want it to go across, right? So these are all my accounts and folders in Outlook, and I can go through and choose which ones I want it to iterate over and which ones not to. Like this one, there's apparently 27,000 sync issues in that folder. But it would go through and it would take the from and the to and the email addresses of who it's been written to. Let's tone it down a bit here. And I don't want to do it because people's email addresses will come up. Basically, it goes across all of my emails that I both sent and received and takes the from and the to and starts counting how many times I've sent emails to them and they've sent emails to me and how big the files were, how big the attachments were. But it gets a running count, and that way I can look back and say, oh, and the last date it was done on. So for every email address. And so basically, like let's say I was in sales, right? I can go through and say, oh, who haven't I talked to in 6 months, right? And this would allow me to go through and go, oh, look, I've sent 200 emails to Bob, but I haven't talked to him in 6 months. I need to reach out to Bob, right? And so I built this as a cool, easy way to go through and kind of do that kind of stuff. I shouldn't say I, because Maestrit did. I mean, he this was pretty a complicated script, to say the least, but it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, does anyone have anything else? Dale, if you have, if you want some help working in that to start with, let me know. We can figure out a time to just chat and work through stuff.
I think at one point, Lana, I think it was the name, can see in the chat. But yeah, I think that was what the name was, asked to see a recording of a macro in IE.
Oh.
Yeah,
So
that was the question, but we didn't get to it. But
I didn't see it.
Yeah. IE doesn't have a macro ability per se. You could probably find a tool somewhere who would be able to record some kind of macro in IE. And someone tried to make an IE macro creator at one point, but there isn't really a robust tool I know of. I do believe that the macro recorder that was made in AutoHotkey was able to do some IE automation. But yeah.
But let me demonstrate real quickly since we're off on the other stuff.
Yeah, fair enough.
This is the tool that I wrote for writing syntax for web scraping with AutoHotkey. So let's say I want to get a pointer to the current IE window. There's actually a function that relies on this, so I'm not going to cover that right now. But this is going to store a pointer in PWB, and then I'm just going to I should have it here. So I'm holding down Control when I left click with the mouse, and this window pops up. And let's say I get from page. I thought I had page. Let's say. I thought I had the page. I mean, it's probably so basic I didn't include it, but we're going to do a message box here.
Can you zoom in a bit?
Yeah, I just realized that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to save this as Webscrape.
Will it work on the Windows pointer, or do you actually need to access the document first?
I don't recall. Is it document in there first?
I can't remember. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. Well, we'll try your way first. Why is that? Oh, I'm hitting the wrong stupid. I'm so used to using the Studio.
Do you have the VB get in your library or what?
Yeah. But that should at least. There it goes. Okay, so that was, it was just off the document. I'm sorry.
Off the window, yeah. Pointer,
yeah. So, but if I go to, let's go to the forum. So I'm going to relaunch this, and you'll see now this is the URL that page is on, right? So I'm programmatically grabbing what page I'm on. And then let's say I wanted to get, so this is the tool that you can use, kind of like the other tool we were doing. And let's say we wanted to get, is a search here? Okay, good. So see how this says name is keywords, and actually ID is even better, right? So we're going to say set on page, set ID, and this is where we put in keywords, and that'll be value. That looks right, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to save that. Let's move this over here so we can see. Now when I run it,
You'll get a message box.
yeah, thank you. And then bam, it threw it in right there, right? Now, this is where it gets, the high level, quickest review is there are, let's say at least 4 ways to connect to a given element on a page. There's the ID, which is the one, if it has an ID, use that first. If not, they might have a name, use that. If not, they have something called a class name, which we can see here is the class, is input search tiny. Then they have tag names, which is up here. It's input, and that's an array, so it's the first one because it's a 0-based index. And then there's actually query selector all, right, is another one. And isn't there one more that I'm blanking on, Jackie?
That is just the index, as the element index, where it will just count all the elements on this page. And
the query selector all, you know what I'm talking about? It's like the CSS kind of version.
Yeah, I'm totally getting what that is, but I'm mentioning the other options. Select the.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Index.
I thought you were explaining what that was. My bad. Okay. Yes, You're right. There's just the overall, which we would probably never ever want to use that, right? Because it's unless it happens to be the first thing on a page, it's going to move and shift. But this is where it gets a little complicated or confusing.
Yeah, and you could say more and more pages are built by some kind of backbone. I'm not sure that's the correct word, but like WordPress is built by PHP. So WordPress is a giant web page designer tool you can use to have quite a good control over your web page. And it is a giant PHP script that's actually put on your server, and it will generate whatever you have designed for your web page. And it will do it dynamically. Each time a user comes to your site, it will generate the page that they access. But that also means that it doesn't actually need to put in IDs or names or classes if it didn't really have a purpose. So unless the designer of WordPress or the designer of the web page chose that he needed to do something specific with that element, it might not have any of those informations.
Yeah.
So that's why it can be quite hard.
Yeah, and generally speaking, and I think Jackie, we haven't touched base on this in a while, but class name, it just says class here, but it's class name when you go to programmatically connect with it.
That's an IE thing, right?
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, I didn't realize that. But it's one of the most commonly available that is unique, and what you might find is there'll be 2 or 3, but they'll be separated by space.
Yeah.
So this is actually 3 class names, right? But you can use all 3, and that makes that element unique on the page, and then you can connect to it. So generally speaking, that's my go-to. Unless there's an ID, that's what I use.
Yeah, again, this one, get elements by class name, had the issue of not working until recently on IE.
Well, I think you have a different version of recently than I do.
No, don't get me wrong, but until you actually got to IE 11, the versions before IE 11, you didn't have get the class name.
Yeah, but that was how many years ago?
Yeah, it's about many years ago. But again,
I
when
understand.
I started, 11 wasn't the thing. 8 was still
Wow.
the big name, and then 9 came, and then 11. So yeah, it's been a part of IE for quite some years now. But again, it depends on whatever companies are locked into.
That's a good point.
So, yeah.
No. But yeah, it it for someone who does it a lot, it can be very straightforward. And even here's the thing, even for someone who does it a lot, it can also, certain sites can be a pain. There are other things that make it more complicated. Like if it needed a listening event or an event listener on this to trigger it, it becomes a little more complicated.
It surely does. And again, it's the reasoning for it is kind of the same to me. Is that when this became a thing with listening to events and using jQuery to do a lot of actual backbone stuff, it became increasingly difficult to replicate what needs to happen on page, because at one point you could simply put in the value and expect the form when you submitted it to actually hold the value. But because you had this extra code depth from jQuery and other things, um, the the true form element hadn't actually been filled with the value that you set, because it had an event listener looking for the user's key down and key up events and bubbling that information onto other hidden elements on page that you actually didn't know about as a user, because you didn't need to know about it, because the code was handling everything. So if you just were a user, you would never notice that it actually was doing a lot of stuff on the back end. But when you try to automate a web page or a user's interaction with a web page, you might need to have a little bit more in there than you would think.
Yeah.
Because it might be looking for you entering by focusing on an element and you exiting an element, or it might be looking for an actual keyboard event or a mouse click event. And so that's an extra level of difficulty when you're trying to automate web pages.
Having said that, the other thing that Jackie and I both do a lot now is we'll actually look at the network traffic when you're on a page and look at what was submitted. And often we won't even try to trigger the thing on the page anymore. We'll just see if we can send the query straight to the server without triggering the event, and it's just faster and easier. So it's a different approach, but it can save a lot of time if you're dealing with a tricky web page.
That's for sure. For some reason, a lot of what's on the front end is kind of complicated because they have used some kind of tool that someone has pre-made for them to build that nice dynamic web page that works both on your PC and on your phone and looks nice either way. But when the information has been entered and it needs to be sent off to the server, they're still using the exact same old method of building a JSON object and sending that off in the form data. And you can replicate that without actually going over all of the web page fields and loading sub tabs and whatever it might be.
Yeah, so if you're doing something, especially like on an internal server, or you're using it for a tool, you're using a browser to search a page that you do a lot of, that's when I look for other approaches. And then there's this whole other category, which is similar to this, is using API calls instead. And it's a deep learning area, but it can save you a ton of time just depending on how frequently you're doing it.
Yeah, and again, if we were supposed to do, I actually like the few examples you made here with the AutoHotkey page, and without having an exact example of doing something specific, we can probably talk about this for a long time. And
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're murking the water more than we're helping, but we're at least talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. What honestly, like, what I tell anybody, right, is if you have something you want to start scraping and you want to have a 20-minute call, and especially if you can show me this, if I can have access to the site and we can talk through what you're doing, I'm happy to talk about what probably is the best approach, right? Because it takes time to be able to figure it out on your own. But if you've been doing it a while, it's not too hard for someone else to review it pretty quickly.
Yeah. It's fair enough, because true, that is how it is. You can easily get that small extra bump to get over whatever hurdle you might have. As you can see, it's the same with the web scraping as it was with the Outlook. It's almost a single line, grabbed the application interface, and from there it's just a matter of sending the right commands to it, and it will act accordingly.
And it can be so fast and reliable that it as much as Jackie and I were not trying to talk out of doing the web scraping approach, it just, because it can be lightning fast and great, and I still use it. It's what I use the most. It's just some websites are trickier than others, and sometimes it's just easier to take a different approach.
Yeah, and at one point I had a very popular article on my page with logging into any web page with a few lines of code, right? And it is kind of what you're seeing here. It doesn't really take that much. If you have the knowledge of the web page, you have access to it, you can see what the elements are called, you know your login credentials, and from there it's pretty simple to tell it to click an element or to fill a field with a value and stuff like that. And of course we have seen quite a lot now, both you, Joe, and me, of weird pages, because when this normal tutorial stuff doesn't work for people, then they reach out. And that's probably why we see more of those things that need a little extra to actually get off to the ground. Yeah. But for the most part, the tutorials will give you those first small tools that you need to actually automate a simple web task.
Yeah, it's funny, in my help on the web syntax writer, I had links to both that Jethro and Micker's tutorial. The other one is which we didn't really talk about, is the DOM, the document object model, and that the more you learn about the DOM, the easier everything is.
Yeah, sure, it is.
And that's kind of the roadmap for a web page, is the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah, the DOM is, if you want to see it in any way, it's just like the tools we started the webinar with when you had, Joe, the control viewers.
Yeah.
And did you have a shortcut for one of them, the Windows Spy?
Sure.
Control S or something.
Oh,
that was the simple one. Yeah, but it's probably just as well. Yeah, but pointed at something. Yeah, and on the window there, but just clicking the 3 button. What you have here is kind of the same as what Jethro is trying to visualize on his tutorial. Is that just as a window has sub-controls and sub-windows that you can fold out and like that. It's the exact same thing on a web page. You have the web page. That page has a document, which is the window, and that window has some amount of controls, which is the buttons, the input fields. The structure is the same. It's just a matter of understanding this is the child of that, and this is the parent of that. And
how you access them. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the DOM, and the same knowledge can be applied to windows and controls. So yeah, just like the tag name, that's the class, and the tag index, that's the NN, right? So yeah, it's very comparable to each other.
Yeah, and this is a general outline of the DOM from Jethro's tutorial. And as Jackie was saying, there's the document, right? There's the overall current page, the document, and then from there you can go through forms, and you can access different things. But once you start understanding it, it opens up a lot of different approaches for what you're trying to do, depending on what you're trying to grab.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, wasn't that about it, Joe?
Yeah, I think we're good. Does anyone else have any other questions? Anything in particular? I think we're wrapping it up. Coolio. I guess we're good. I don't know about you, Jackie, but I'm not sure if I'll be around in July at this time. At this moment, I'm just not sure. But we'll for the webinar.
Do you know the week numbers?
I can pull them up. And my did I stop sharing already? I guess I did. But let me look. I have my hot string, of course, from my webinar. It is July 16th.
What week is that?
Oh, well, I need to go back to Outlook for that. It sounds like it'll be about the third week, is my guess.
The third week? The week number, like the 26th week or the 28th.
Oh, okay.
Week,
sorry. I don't. Yeah, we don't. I don't use those. But if you're looking at, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how.
I don't use it much, but when my wife tells me when she can get vacation, and so I just use that instead of her saying from the 4th of June to the 5th of July or whatever it might be. She'll just say week 28, 9, and 30. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks for hanging out, and maybe we'll see you next month. Maybe we'll take a break as we did last year for July, I think, and we'll catch up to you. But thank you, everyone. Have a good evening or day.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.